Americans, and I'm trying to figure out with very different experiences, because undoubtedly your family owned slaves, right?
Oh, sure.
You know, and so now we're dealing with racism and how that's sort of jamming up our progress.
My grandmother, her great-grandfather was probably the largest slave owner in South Carolina.
Right, right.
He was an Englishman.
Right, well, so that was a way of getting energy. One stronger group got energy from a weaker group, but now that we're talking about free energy and intention...
Daniel Blake.
So anyway, Buck, do you think any of your relatives came to South Carolina with rice?
Well,
or you want to say
the reason why I originally had asked John about it was because my great-great-great-grandfather and his brother came to California in 1849 for the gold rush, and but there were a lot of their contemporaries that were afraid to come to America because they may not be coming back, and I believe it was because that in the 1700s, when the rice plantation owners in South Carolina had chartered a so-called slave ship to, once it emptied in Hong Kong, to bring back rice farmers to show their slaves how to properly produce rice. Was
just a second, you mean black slaves were taken over to Hong Kong?
No. See, the freight that was brought from America to Hong Kong for trading, once the boat was empty, instead of coming back with the ordinary goods, in the 1700s, the plantation owners chartered a boat to bring back Chinese rice farmers to show their slaves how to properly plant.
And what year was this like?
This was in the 1700s.
Yeah.
When the plantation owners were trying to find some way to produce more rice, because their regular slaves are doing such a...
From Africa didn't know how.
Well, I mean, it's a new job. So,
and most of them, this is, I'm not sure exactly, but I think most of them came from the Barbados,
Yeah, the Barbados, like Cuba, were basically a holding cell or island for the slaves from Africa, a clearinghouse for the slaves.
But they learned a lot of techniques, because when they came to the Carolinas, they moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, like I imagined that
they'd already learned the techniques of some form of rice farming. I know a little bit about it, but I mean, I can tell you how they're set up.
Why is South Carolina given to rice production?
Oh, it's just the perfect climate for rice. It's just like the most important rice areas in China. It's virtually the same climate, so that the Chinese rice farmers that were brought over in the 1700s to improve the production of the regular slaves.
Buck, what I would really like you to do, if you could write this up. I've got a newspaper here.
Want me to stop it?
No, but it's the Charleston Mercury, and my friend Charles Waring is the publisher. And since I went deer hunting with him and killed 2 deer the last time I went, he sent me the Mercury, and it's a bi-weekly. And I'll give you a couple of copies so you can sort of judge what kind of paper it is. But I'm sure if you talk to him, he would love to publish. He would like to get a write-up of this.
Well, I was more interested in doing the research on why, why my forefathers were reluctant to come back here, because I suspect that there wasn't a very high percentage of the rice farmers that came over in the 1700s made it back to China, and so that
I didn't even know they were there. And the first crops in South Carolina weren't rice at all. They were what's that berry that you press? It's a terrible process indigo.
Indigo?
And they
Yeah.
grew indigo
What's
first.
indigo?
Oh, like it's a like it's a
Purple.
fabric dye.
It's a beautiful purple.
They were getting dye. They were making
Well,
dye,
Yeah, it goes with the cotton crop.
but you can't eat it.
No, but
It's a dye.
you have to color the cotton that you sell.
Oh, I see.
So
You-
that's
you-
why it's a big crop.
And you must realize that fabrics in those days are extremely rare.
Right.
Cotton sold in the 1800s for a price today which should have been in the $20 or $30 a pound.
Yeah.
And George Washington only had about 3 or 4 suits. Go to
We're back to George Washington here.
no, go to his, what is it, Mount Vernon, and there are no closets. Why? Because he didn't have any clothes.
Right. Right. Now through plastics, right? Through DuPont, we
There
have
you go,
synthetic
plastic.
plastics.
No, but excuse me, Bach, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
how can I exploit this? And this is a new idea. It's very logical to me.
Well, it was the history books filled with the how the Chinese farmers had were brought over to increase the rice production. However, there isn't anything said about how many went back to China, and whatever became of them in South Carolina. And I suspect the reason why my forefathers were reluctant to come back here was that even though a boat was chartered to bring them from the Pearl River Delta to South Carolina, there wasn't a boat chartered to bring them back once the job was done. So
What'd they do? Kill them?
well, I assumed that they just mixed in with the regular slaves,
Oh.
and consequently, when one of the reasons why I had wanted to talk to John was to find the descendants that have pretty much stayed intact in South Carolina, close to the plantations, to genetically test to see how much lineage came from the Chinese rice farmers.
How interesting.
One thought on that. I'm also belong to another family there called the Middleton family, and I've just been to a reunion, and one of the I would say departures is that the Middleton family reunion has been changed to the Middleton Heritage, and so this year they asked all of the people that had ever worked on the Middleton place. It's an enormous. It's still there. It's one of the oldest. I guess you would call them cultured or landscape gardens in the country. It's probably the most famous.
That was
so-
quite a culture,
So they,
South Carolina.
instead of just asking members of the families back this year, they asked all of the descendants of the slaves, and lo and behold, quite a few came, and they had lectures there. And the guy that I unfortunately got tangled up in my own family, and I missed part of the lecture, but he worked a fair amount on the genetics connecting the slaves with their ancestors.
Yeah, it's fortunate that genetic testing has been advanced to where it's a piece of cake now to replicate what was lost in the oral history.
But if you, I can give you all the names there. If you ever went back and wanted to explore, there would be a couple of contacts. You could go to Charles Dewell or Charles Waring, and I'm sure that Charles Dewell would be. I'm not sure how much rice was raised on Middleton Place. There was some, but basically they got into the gardens very early in the 18th century. But they must have made money on rice, so I'm sure that he would be. I'm confident he would be interested in exploring the questions you might have.
Yeah, because it took gold, the gold rush, to overcome the reluctance of sharecroppers who had nothing to lose to come back over to this continent. And so I suspect very few of the rice farmers from the 1700s got back to China. Otherwise, my great-great-great-grandfather and his brother wouldn't have been so reluctant to come here, if not for the gold. I'm sure if they were advertising for rice farmers, sharecroppers, as they were, they'd have been a lot more enthusiastic about coming over here, like the previous century's rice farmers.
Have come back.
Yeah.
My general manager at Mara Farms was a man named Joe Ikaguchi. He was Japanese. And his family, he came over here in the 1900s and bought farms in the valley outside of Los Angeles. What is it called? The
San Fernando Valley.
San Fernando Valley. And they were strawberry farmers. And Joe, at the time when he grew up, this is World War II now, he went to Redlands College and became, when World War II came along, he went in the Army, and he stayed in the Army for about 20 years and became a colonel in the Army, and then came to work for us. His family was one of the niece. They were Icy. In other words, they were first generation. He was a Nisi, but their property was confiscated by the government and given to somebody else. But now the next generation, his daughter, Ruby, she lives in Los Angeles. She makes about $300,000 a year. Is a published, what do you call them?
PR person, maybe?
Well, no, she advises companies on the inner workings of the political system in Los Angeles.
Oh.
She's a lobbyist.
And
she makes a goddamn fortune. He's got
some of the paradigm that's going to be shifted here.
3 kids that have done extremely well. So he's really gotten back on his feet, although he was a colonel and fighting the Japanese in Asia, and he was on the ground as a counterintelligence agent, and here his family had lost their property in the United States.
Oh, actually, they probably had lost their property in the San Joaquin Valley around Fresno if they were strawberry farmers.
Yeah, well, maybe that was it.
Yeah, because I actually just visited a Japanese strawberry farmer in Fresno when I left California last week.
Joe is still here in Panama City. Maybe I can round him up if you'd like to talk to him.
I'm sure he knows the Haraguchis, who are strawberry farmers in Fresno, because not a whole lot of Japanese stuck with the strawberry farms around Fresno.
Can I just interrupt a second, because we have John Shelbourn here. The reason I wanted you in on this discussion is I wanted to make 0-point energy very practical. These two gentlemen here, Buk Lhu and John Cheshire, had ancestors in a part of the country that had, slavery. So how do you think, when people will say it's impossible to have 0-point energy because it goes so much against our human drama, or do you think we'll have a greater human drama or a culture?
Well, right. The people that had slaves were just ultimate pragmatists. We had our Constitution at the time, and we weren't honoring the ideals in our Constitution because the pragmatists, farmers, and industrialists had to make a go of the economy at all costs.
Right.
And then the American ideal is such a high thing that we still, after all these years, have not really fully realized the American ideal. And it's a similar thing in science with 0-point energy. We've got to emerge up out of the things that can't be done into the world of possibilities.
Right.
The fact that the average Joe could build one of these things and then demonstrate it, and yet there's no scientific theory would provide the impetus besides the obvious fact that this thing is shows that it can produce useful power from nothing.
But you were indicating that there have to be some investors step forward. So
Right. Well,
so still it seems like some leaders are going to emerge.
They'll have to get behind. If they don't get on the front, if they don't come in the ground floor, then they're going to have to suffer the loss in marginal investments that they could have if they did get in the first floor.
But then we have the old paradigm again.
It's a very high risk, very high yield type of situation.
But John, how can it be high yield if the energy is coming from everywhere, and it's not somebody holding the throttle, so to speak?
Well,
Devices.
Devices?
Yeah, my point is that the emergence of the devices can't happen until there's a change in the mindset at large.
Okay.
Until people quit perceiving the world as a world of lack and strife.
World of lack?
Yeah, of lack and strife. A world of necessity to a world of potentiality, and a world where we can finally turn away from the constant struggle to survive and deal with our spirituality. And that's the American ideal right there at the top, the thing that we've been going after for hundreds of years that we can't get to. That the Buk's ancestors
they saw the potential to
could
come
be
to this
here
country.
in America, the world, the country with the greatest philosophical potential, yet still be here in a subservient role.
Yeah.
As he described. It's the same analogous situation in terms of the technical world, the world of industry that John has talked about. We're going to have to decide that we're going to take a risk and look at these potentials and see if they really do exist. Somebody's going to have to provide the capitalization and the business model, the new business model to be able to bring this in. But it can't be brought into a world of strife because it would explode. It's too powerful.
But John, what encouraged me was what John Cheshire said, this Middleton group. It wasn't just, the high-born descendants of the plantation owners. Now you had a reunion where the slaves in the plantation
of the people that had worked on the plantation.
Right. So
whether they were high or low, that ones that actually did the work.
Right. So it seems as though it's becoming a big party, and that if some of the members are missing, it's not as much fun. Or maybe I'm too
Well, it's a rapprochement. It's the realization of the unconscious conflict of bad things that go on in a country like America that has the greatest constitution in the world. But bad things keep going on that everybody knows about. It's the rapprochement. It's the resolving, like South Africa did after apartheid. They were able to bring the parties together and resolve. They still have problems, but resolve. The system that resulted in apartheid.
But let's
10 minutes.
Let's not totally fault a capitalistic system. I think once
Chinese are capitalists too, right, Buk?
Oh yeah, capitalism is a piece of cake. I mean, I can understand why everybody came back to the Middleton reunion because, even somebody like me who really hasn't gone out of his way to research the family tree, is that I found out about not just the past 6 generations, but the future 6 generations, because the first Lhu that came to America for the gold rush, he had named 10 generations in advance, so that consequently I was able to name the trusts for my grandchildren's grandchildren in advance because the names were already given.
I see you shaking your head, John. This concept of ancestors.
This fascinates me. I think the inclination of people to do this is really what John was getting at, that they somehow sense that a caste system is wrong, that we do have a system of merit. We have a heritage of being proud of our families, but we still have a heritage of people having to perform in whatever role they're in, and that they have to be good citizens. And people sense that, and they want that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that rule went in, and people applauded that. I thought, my God, this is so different, you know. When all these ex-slaves come in here, this is going to be, it was great.
Yeah, wow.
Everyone was delighted to see them. They had a good time, and I'm sure we'll continue. That'll just expand.
See, to me, that gives me hope about the 0 point energy coming along.
Mm-hmm.
That we're
while John was
maturing.
talking, it reminded me of Jesus, you know, for those people that think on that subject, you know, is that, you know, I suppose a lot of Christians think, well, Jesus is the most wonderful thing in the world, but then in the writings and everything, the disciples said, you know, as it was transcribed, you know, from what Jesus said, was that, you know, he had a hard message to take. It's very hard. It sounds wonderful, but when you really are taking in the message, it's very hard.
Oh man.
And see, that's the thing about America, you know, is that we haven't surrendered to the American ideal. It's a hard message to take in because it involves a change in the way that things are organized. Is it
compatible with capitalism? You answer that, Bug.
Oh yeah, the capitalism has such a flexible framework. I saw that capitalism was assimilated just in a few years. I had gone to China in 1978 for the first time to build an American motel, and to see the party members adapt toward the capital model. Over the 4 years that I was working in China, it was amazing, the flexibility within its framework, and there certainly is a lot of room in the matrix for applying or even adapting itself to the great communist distribution system that I saw in place in China when I first went in 1978. It was just a piece of cake.
Buck told me that you didn't have 2 bicycles until everybody had 1 bicycle. You know, so that's what he meant.
Like in their production brigade, and
there were a lot of bicycles over there.
Yeah,
particularly in Chengdu, God, I nearly got run over.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, you know, like I'm not worried about the future of the world because, you know, there's just such incredible wealth to be used. You know, even in this country, there is almost 500,000 square feet for each citizen, and every year on that 500,000 square feet, there is about $2 million of energy in the way of sunlight and wind at the rate of a dime per kilowatt hour, and rain at the rate of a penny a gallon, which is not unusual evaluations. But you know, this is a very rich country, and this planet can United States, and even in China, is that this planet can, you know, support many times more people if we learn to use the energy that is available.
And yeah, I study life in the universe, and the book that you have, you know, UFO Contact from IARGA, if you read through the book, you could see that they had concentrated their living conditions into communities in these huge enclosed communities, apartment buildings that are huge. And they had an interesting idea to offer, is that they discovered that they can ascend in their evolution once they're properly supporting a certain number of individuals on the planet. And so it sort of goes into what Buck was saying, is that, everything is enhanced as long as the means of production, capitalism, and everything else is beneficial. The capitalists are good corporate citizens, which
Now
we don't have.
We have 3 minutes left,
Right now.
John. Can you sell Buck on investing in free energy?
Can I sell Buck? Yes.
What would you say?
I could say
'Cause
Buck.
He just
I can say
explained.
Buck. The
he explained capitalism.
next time you go back to China, if you'll research it, you'll find that at the grassroots level there, small inventors have started building zero-point energy machines in a controlled society, which still exists in China, since it's still a communist state, I guess you could say, the People's Republic of China, is that information can never get out to the outside world unless the government intended it to. Something that's paradigm changing, world changing. If you do the research, you'll see that some Chinese citizens now are building the zero-point energy devices. And to my way of thinking, that's an implicit agreement with the government that might be a good area to develop. And so,
Well, the only low energy engines that I know of that are being built there are for my vegetable oil diesels, and I've found that it is just so easy to produce power off of vegetable oil, and certainly there is so much more potential there.
right.
For
in China?
The point is,
China isn't married to a
it's a renewable resource. That's the
Renewable.
Yeah.
But-
China
but
isn't
John was-
married to a high performance engine philosophy.
But
And-
John was saying, like turpentine, you couldn't be growing a lot of trees, pine trees, is a renewable
Well,
thing.
What I was pointing out was that if we burn the trees to produce the energy we have today, we wouldn't have any more trees. We were very lucky to uncover the reservoirs of coal, of mostly oil, but coal also.
Well, turpentine, you don't have to kill a tree to get turpentine.
Well, that's true.
Is that just like maple syrup? It's only sap.
And it was a big industry here in Bay County for a long time. It's a restrictive industry though, because you have to grow trees, and trees are not a particularly economic way of using the land, as St. Joe has found out.
Well, that's only because you're not taking into the costs of using the fossil fuels in agriculture. Trees, as a part of permaculture, would, in the long run, use less energy to produce more energy, because the trees are just harvesting the sunshine for you, and producing the volatile sap that you.
Certainly, if you could use enzymes to use the waste product of trees and produce fuel, that would be a great step forward. Vegetable matter. For instance, in shrimp farming, which I'm just getting out of it, one of the reasons it works is that you can use a land-based feed for the shrimp, whereas in fish farming, you're using live fish on a lower scale to feed the fish you would like, and that doesn't help the overall production of fish in the ocean at all. You're going to have to go to a land-based feed for fish. So I'm with you. It depends. It really depends on what products you use out of the trees. You certainly can't burn them for energy.
Yeah, fortunately, since China put so many unemployed people to work planting the same Monterey pine trees that you see along the shore here, is that there'll be a vast reservoir of turpentine available for low combustion or low compression
Engines.
gasoline engines, just like what Honda had built when he was starting off in the business. Personally, I favor diesel engines, but even though I've owned many more Honda engines than diesel engines.
Now, John, both Buck and John Cheshire had talked about other energy sources. And Buck said that you're essentially harvesting the energy of the sun.
Right.
And you were talking about the sun being hydrogen-based. And then you said, where does hydrogen come from? Can you just make some comment about tapping that energy source? Because I'm seeing all of a sudden, as the three of us, or, you know, me and the three of you, I'm seeing how organic free energy
Hydrogen just occurs in our universe. It's the most plentiful molecule in our universe, right, John?
It comes, hydrogen is a creation of energy.
Well, hydrogen can be used to create energy, like in a fuel cell. You combine it with an oxidizer, and it produces electricity.
But you have
and
to
as a
create
byproduct is water.
You have to create the hydrogen in the first place.
Well, you got to find a source for it, and that's getting around to my point. My point is that if you have a system of renewable energy, like propose that hydrogen, whatever the source may be, is renewable, then renewable means that that's an ecosystem of its own. It's a cycle there. It's generated and reproduced, and you could have bacteria that produce hydrogen, and then you could have all the byproducts absorbed back in the ecosystem with no carbon footprint. And my problem with burning fuels, whether they be renewable or not, is that you're increasing the carbon footprint, which is the disaster we see in our environment.
Well,
right
you're talking about burning hydrogen, though.
Yeah.
And that creates some byproducts you don't want.
Heat and water, or electricity and water.
Right. Yeah. But also in the sun, it creates radiation products, which are benign. They're short-lived.
Well, even though you create a carbon footprint, burning vegetable oil and turpentine for the gasoline engines, or even alcohol for that matter, is that the source of it comes from plants that convert the carbon dioxide into air.
CO2, right?
Yeah, the photosynthesis has a mitigating effect on the carbon footprint, and also it also gives you an easy vehicle to store the excess carbon that has been released in the air from the premature use of the fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have been stored for these millions of years, and therefore, by storing, by carbon banking these fossil fuels, is that you allowed the planet to cool off rather than burning it off to heat up again.
Well, right. That was my proviso for a combustion system of energy or power generation, is that it needs to be holistic. It needs to be a cyclic thing where all the products are reused and recycled in terms of the effect on the environment. But that we can talk about that, and it can be a perfect world, but we have to deal with the practical world that we live in.
Like from a simple scientific point of view, like I'm just, like a relatively a novice engineer, even though I went to 10 colleges. I haven't worked at too many engineering jobs, but it's very easy to store the carbon that we can grow. Right. And so the carbon that is absorbed from photosynthesis, it's easy. Just stockpile the wood that's left over from turpentine production, and like if you want to cool off the planet,
grow some trees.
Yeah, it is easy.
Well, since zero-point energy is a convergent energy conversion process, convergent meaning cooling, it is by nature cooling. As a matter of fact, that could be one of the chief problems that we deal with. We'd have to resolve the energy balance because it is inherently cooling.
You mean just when we have global warming,
we could cool through zero-point energy, and
if you drew energy from the vacuum, it's a cooling process.
It will cool the mass that's present in the area. Although the energy stream of conversion isn't intuitively obvious, but it will produce a cooling effect.
Well, if you if you build up the population the way Buk is talking, these processes of energy use are all going to have to be balanced. I mean, if you really...
Well, the easiest way to cool the planet is to store vegetable oil.
Yeah,